Hey, name's Thomas. Folks used to call me Pops, till one day they just stopped. I was sitting at my own kitchen table, Father's Day morning, when my daughter handed me a gift box with a smile. Before I could even touch it, my wife leaned in and said, "Don't touch it. It's not for you." That's when I knew. This family had made room for my name, but not my presence. They used my signature, my legacy, my silence. So I asked myself, what happens when a man who's been erased decides to write his name back in? Father's Day ain't the same no more. Used to be, the kitchen would be filled with little voices, sticky fingers, and burnt toast that somehow tasted better than any breakfast I ever had. Hand-drawn cards with crooked hearts and best dad ever in backward letters. That used to mean something. But now I wake up to silence and a cold cup of coffee I brewed myself. I sat alone at the kitchen table, the light barely breaking through the blinds. This old house in Jackson, Mississippi used to hum with life. Now the hum is gone, and all that's left is the sound of the refrigerator ticking like it's counting down something I ain't figured out yet. Vernice walked by, her steps soft but deliberate. She didn't look at me, didn't say a word, just moved past like I was part of the furniture. Used to be she'd kiss me on the cheek and say Happy Father's Day. This morning, nothing. Just cold air and a colder silence. That's when the door creaked open. "Daddy, I got you something." Kenesha stood there holding a box wrapped in silver paper, a red ribbon tied neatly on top. Her smile was too bright, too tight, like it had been practiced in the mirror. I blinked. My heart did something strange, beat harder, but not faster. Hope, maybe. I stood up, my hand moving slowly toward the gift. "Don't touch it." Vernice's voice cut through the room like glass breaking. Not loud, but sharp. Everything stopped. Kenesha froze. My hand hovered inches from the box, then dropped, almost in shame. I didn't look at Vernice. I didn't look at Kenesha. I just stared at that box like it had just slapped me. "Whose side you on?" Vernice said, still not looking at me, but her whole body turned toward our daughter. "What's in the box, Kenesha?" I asked, quiet. She laughed, one of those fake laughs that come with attitude. "It's just a Father's Day gift. Why y'all acting like I brought poison?" Nobody said a word. "Don't touch it, Thomas. Please." This time, Vernice's voice wasn't sharp. It was low, pleading, almost afraid. And that's when I knew this wasn't about no gift. It wasn't just the box. It was the way she said it. Like that wrapping held more than a surprise. It held a secret, a dangerous one. I didn't say anything. I just sat back down. Kenesha stood there a moment longer, then set the box on the table, kissed me on the cheek, and left. The door didn't slam, but it should have. I stared at the box like it was breathing, like any moment it'd jump open and show me something I wasn't ready to see. I remembered how Vernice used to look at me like I had the answers. These days she looked at me like I was the problem, like I couldn't be trusted with truth. Or worse, like I didn't deserve it. I glanced at her. "What's in the box?" She met my eyes, finally, and I saw something in them I ain't seen in 30 years of marriage. Fear. "You don't need to know." That's all she said. I didn't argue. I just got up and walked to the garage, sat down among my tools, rusted memories, and half-finished projects nobody cared about but me. This was my space, the only space left that felt like mine. Maybe peace wasn't about quiet. Maybe it was about finally being heard. But I wasn't heard in that house. Not anymore. And that box, it wasn't just a gift. It was a message, a warning, a line drawn in a war I didn't even know I was losing. I stared out the small window of the garage, watching the sun begin to rise over cracked pavement and dying lawns. I'll find out what's in that box, one way or another. That night, long after Vernice's breathing had settled into that familiar rhythm of deep sleep, I sat up in bed, staring at the ceiling. The moonlight stretched across the hallway like it was trying to show me the way. I didn't need much convincing. I already knew what I had to do. I moved slow, one foot, then the other. The old floor creaked under my weight, and I paused like a thief in my own home. My house, my kitchen, my life. But somehow I felt like a stranger walking through it. The box was right where she left it, perched on the counter, untouched, wrapped so neat, like it meant something holy. But I knew better. Gifts don't come wrapped in silence and warnings. I stood there for a moment, hand hovering just like earlier that day, but this time I didn't hesitate. I unwrapped it carefully, quiet, like I was peeling back the layers of a wound I wasn't ready to see. Inside was a plain manila envelope with my daughter's handwriting, to be opened privately. Beneath it, folded with more care than any family memory deserved, was an old photo. Me, Vernice, and a young Kenesha in pigtails. We were smiling. Real smiles. Back when I still believed family meant the same thing to all of us. I slid the photo aside and opened the envelope. First page. Power of attorney. My name at the top. Kenesha's name and Vernice's listed as authorized agents. The whole document screamed legal, cold, clinical. I turned the page, my hand shaking now. More forms, asset transfers, control of bank accounts, even a medical directive. Then I saw it. My signature. Only. I never signed this. It looked exactly like mine. Same loop on the T, same pressure on the downstrokes. But I'd never put pen to this, and there, tucked into the back of the envelope, was a note. We did what's best, Daddy. Don't make this hard. No love you, no explanation. Just that. I stood still, staring at it like maybe the words would rearrange themselves into something less cruel, but they didn't. They stayed right there, mocking me. I sat down at the table, the same table we used to eat Sunday dinner at, the same spot where Kenesha told me she got accepted into Howard, the same place Vernice cried when her sister passed. Now they planned this. Flash hit me. Last year, Kenesha had asked me to sign a paper for a church event, said it was a sponsorship form. I didn't read it. I trusted her. Then that doctor's visit. Vernice insisted on going in with me, said she'd help with the forms. I remember feeling foggy that day. She filled most of it out, passed it to me. I signed without looking. The bank had called a few months back, said my password was changed. Vernice said she handled it, said they had updated systems. I thought they were looking out for me, but now all I could think was they were setting the board. Playing pieces while I watched, thinking it was checkers. Turns out they were playing chess all along. The next morning I placed everything back exactly as it was, rewrapped the box, straightened the ribbon, sat down at the table like nothing had happened. Over breakfast I picked at my eggs. Vernice was scrolling her phone. I was reading something last night, I said lightly, about power of attorney. Seems like folks been using it to move money around. She didn't even blink. You were tired, she said, slicing her toast. We did what's needed. Don't stir things up. My jaw tightened, but I didn't say a word. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Kenesha. Let it go, Dad. We just want you to rest. Rest. Like I was some old dog they were trying to put on the porch. I didn't feel rage, not right away. What I felt was smaller, like a crack running through the center of a plate you've eaten off your whole life. They didn't lie to me. They decided I wasn't worth the truth. That's what stung. After breakfast, I watched Vernice pour her coffee. She didn't look at me, but then she glanced toward the counter. A half-second look, and I saw it, the unspoken language. The glance that said, "You didn't touch it, did you?" Then I saw her check her phone, probably checking with Kenesha. They were talking, without talking. That's what burned, not the papers, Not even the forged signature. It was the silence. The decisions made behind closed doors I didn't even know were locked. I thought about every little moment I'd dismissed. Family gatherings canceled without asking me, doctor appointments moved without my say, the insurance agent Vernice said she'd handle. What else was I left out of? What else had I already lost without knowing? I didn't blow up. I just went quiet. Not the kind of quiet that surrenders, the kind that watches, plans. They think this is over, but it's just getting started. It started with a little heart, a red heart drawn next to family strategy session, 3 p.m. on the fridge calendar. I hadn't written that. My handwriting's rough, slanted. This was neat, round, unmistakably Kenesha's. I stood there for a minute, staring at it like it might blink or disappear. I live in this house. I pay the light bill. My name's still on the deed. And somehow, I'm learning about a strategy session from a calendar I never touched. I turned and asked Vernice, real calm, "What's this meeting on the fridge about?" She didn't even look up from her mug. "You don't need to stress over this. It's just logistics, baby." Logistics, like I was cargo. I nodded like I understood, but inside something pulled tight. Not because they planned a meeting, because they didn't think I needed to be in it. At 2:55, I was in the living room. By 3:00, I was told to go lie down. Kenesha's tone was sweet, too sweet. She said she was worried about my blood pressure. I played along, went to my bedroom and closed the door, but I didn't rest. I listened. Voices muffled through the wall. Words floated up like smoke. Power of attorney. Asset management. Health directives. Someone chuckled, said, "If he doesn't like it, that's on him." I sat still for a minute, then got up and cracked my door open. I didn't want to hear more. I had to. Another voice, lower, more serious. "If the facility's ready next month, we'll need the paperwork finalized by then." Facility. My chest tightened. I hadn't heard that word since Daddy got moved into that home. A cold place where they bathed him like a child and fed him mashed potatoes with no salt. I'd promised myself I'd never let that happen to me. The door shut again. I sat on the bed, palms sweating. Later, after the house went quiet, Kenesha walked in like nothing happened. She had that plastic smile, one she used to give when she brought home a C+ and tried to make it sound like an A. She stood by the dresser, hands folded. "Hey, Daddy, just wanted to check in." I didn't say anything. She went on. "We're just planning ahead, exploring some long-term care options. You know, just in case. It's about sustainability." "Sustainability," I said. My voice came out low, gravelly. "Yeah, and resource allocation, predictive healthcare models." It felt like she was reading off a brochure. "I'm still here, Kenesha, still sharp." She nodded, but her eyes didn't soften. "This isn't about feelings, Dad. It's about facts." That line, that tone, it hit harder than any insult could have. She wasn't speaking to me like her father. She was talking to a spreadsheet. She left with a pat on my shoulder like I was a patient who needed reassuring. I sat there long after she was gone. That evening, I walked through the house, slow. Something felt different. And the living room wall used to have our wedding photo in the middle, me and Vernice on our front porch in '79. It was gone. In its place, some abstract painting with swirls and beige. My old recliner, replaced by a gray couch with buttons on the side. My bookshelf, with my Vietnam memoirs and baseball trophies, was now out in the garage. I found it behind the Christmas boxes. It wasn't just redecorating. They were erasing me, quietly, one frame at a time. I stood in the hallway, stared at the bare spot where my photo used to hang. "You're not just erasing a man," I muttered. "You're erasing his memory." That night, I didn't sleep. I took out my old journal, the one with the leather cover Louise gave me before she passed. I flipped past the empty pages and started writing. Not a speech, not some declaration, just a thought. When your voice don't echo in your own house, maybe it's time to find a new one. I sat with that sentence a long while. It wasn't meant to be deep. Just true. Before I turned out the light, I grabbed the phone, dialed slow, deliberate. An old friend from church, Brother Mason, a man who once told me, "Brother, your story still matters." I didn't even know what I'd say when he picked up, but I knew I needed someone to hear me. I looked up one more time at that empty spot on the wall, then down at an old photo on the nightstand, me and Louise, smiling in the sunlight. I whispered, "You would have stood up for me, Louise." Next morning, I was sitting at the kitchen table holding that chipped mug Louise always used. The sunlight was weak, just brushing across the linoleum floor, and Vernice moved slow like her feet were heavier than usual. She didn't look at me, just stirred the grits like they'd done something to her. "You've been distant, Thomas," she said, still not meeting my eyes. "Like you don't want to be part of the plan." I looked up. "What plan?" She shook her head a little too fast. "Just checking in, that's all." But I know the difference between love and monitoring. Her voice was too careful. That wasn't concern. It was surveillance. Like she was logging data in her head, not caring about the answer. That was the moment I decided. From now on, I write everything down. My thoughts, what they say, what they do. Not to cry about it, but to keep it straight. Because gaslighting starts small, just enough to make you doubt yourself. I wasn't going to give them that power. Later that Sunday, we went to South Hill Baptist. We'd been going there for decades. That sanctuary always felt like a second home. But not this time. The sermon was on Mark 3:25. A house divided cannot stand. And every time the pastor said it, Vernice nudged me like I was the one splitting the house in half. After service, while folks were shaking hands and hugging, Sister Laverne, who's known me since '83, pulled me aside near the choir stand. "Everything okay at home, Thomas?" she whispered, eyes soft but searching. I paused. "Why you ask?" She smiled too quick. "Oh, just a feeling." "A feeling, huh?" That told me all I needed to know. This wasn't just a household issue anymore. It was leaking out. Whispers were getting passed like church bulletins. And then I saw Kenesha. She was standing over by Deacon Mark, leaning in, her voice low. He nodded a few times, arms crossed. Didn't take much to guess what that conversation was about. Probably estate matters. Maybe even care planning. The sanctuary didn't feel safe no more. It felt staged. Back home, I barely sat down before Kenesha said she wanted to have dinner. A reset meal, she called it. We sat at the table, chicken pot pie and side eyes being served equally. Kenesha reached across her plate, spoke real calm. "Dad, if you make this harder than it needs to be, we'll all suffer. Don't let pride do that." It wasn't a threat, not loud, not harsh, but it was clear. I looked at Vernice. She was buttering a biscuit like we weren't even talking about me. I said, "I got feelings too, Kenesha." She didn't flinch. And we respect that. But sometimes feelings don't match facts. You're being a little paranoid lately. Paranoid. That word stuck in my teeth like something rotten. After dinner, I went into the den, closed the door, and pulled out my old cell phone. The one without apps, just a voice memo feature. I started recording, labeling files, Monday talk, Sunday threat, church whispers, not for revenge, for protection. Because when folks say things like, "Don't let pride do that," what they really mean is, bow your head or else. Later that night, I stood in the bathroom, looking in the mirror under that dim yellow light. My beard had grayed more than I thought. My eyes, they still had fire, just buried under months of restraint. I looked myself in the face and whispered, "You still a man. You still got choices." Said it again, louder this time. "You still a man." I stood up straighter, remembered what Maya Angelou once said, "I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it." So I practiced saying no, practiced saying stop, practiced sounding like a man who remembers his worth. Then came the final push. Kenesha was in the hallway later that night, checking something on her phone. I stepped out, voice steady. "I ain't your client," I said. "I'm your father. And if you ever talk down to me again in my house, it won't end with just a conversation." She looked up like I'd slapped her. Vernice peeked from the kitchen but said nothing. I didn't yell, didn't cuss, didn't slam a door. I walked past both of them, not rushing, not apologizing. Sometimes dignity don't have to raise its voice. It just has to stand up. Later that night, I overheard Kenesha on the phone. "Dad's having mood swings," she said, her voice too sweet to be real. "Mood swings?" "No. I was just finally wide awake." I walked into the living room just to get my glasses, the familiar click of the hallway floorboard underfoot. But I froze. There she was, Kenesha, on speakerphone, Vernice's voice echoing faintly in the background. "Dad's gonna have to adapt," she said, "or he's gonna get left behind." The words landed in the empty space between us. I stayed in the doorway, heart pounding, watching them, talking about me as though I were old news already. The language was clipped, cold, control, placement, narrative. Vernice chimed in quietly. "I'm too tired to argue." No defense, just fatigue. They didn't know I heard, didn't expect I'd stay. I backed away, hiding behind the doorframe. Quiet, but seething. I let them think I was out of the room, but inside I was a storm. Later that evening, we attended a banquet at New Light Fellowship. The hall was dressed up, gold tablecloths, soft lighting, neighbors and church folks mingling. I had rehearsed walking in with dignity. But dignity in a room that already seemed against you tastes bitter. We sat at Kenesha's table. I forced a smile. She leaned over and said loud enough for half the hall to hear, "Y'all, my daddy be thinking he's still running things." Laughter rippled. I swallowed. It tasted like ash. An elder lady seated nearby whispered to another, "Don't let your own daughter small you in public." The words cut deeper than any insult. I remembered when Kenesha was 6, learning to ride on our street. She'd laugh and say, "You got me, Daddy." Back then, respect was two-way. Now, she'd taught the room to laugh at me. Back home, I wanted to take the lead. I asked for a family meeting, tone firm, not angry. I laid it out. These small humiliations, the calendar meeting, the gift box warning, the whispered plans behind walls. I stood in the living room, facing both Vernice and Kenesha. "Y'all done forgot who I am," I said, quiet but clear. "I ain't just your obligation. I'm your foundation. Without me, none of this exists." I felt my voice echo in that room that used to echo laughter. Vernice tried to soften. "Thomas, you're overthinking." But Kenesha cut in, defiant. "You're being oversensitive, clinging to some old man's pride." She sneered it like pride was a crime. I shook my head, lifted my chin. This old man's pride paid for every light still on in this house. The silence swallowed her next words. The power shifted. Then I did what they didn't expect. I pulled out a folder I'd kept hidden. Inside, a notarized update to my will. The paperwork freed me. No longer would they be proxies over all I built. Kenesha's eyes narrowed. "You went behind our backs?" she snapped. I stayed calm. "No. I went behind your manipulation." I watched them flinch. Their control over the space cracked. They stood across from me like mirrors, unsure which reflection to keep. I left them there, mouths half open, and walked down the hall, each step intentional. In my journal later I wrote, "First they ignore you, then they mock you, then they fear you, then they try to control you. I'm at stage 3. I locked the folder in my safe, rehearsed what I'd say tomorrow. That night a knock came. It was Kenesha's voice, hesitant, softer. "Dad, can we talk?" The house held its breath. The morning after that knock at my door, I woke before the sun. The house was quiet, too quiet. I moved through the kitchen like I didn't belong there anymore. Made my coffee slow, stirring it like I was stirring something deeper. I sat down with my journal, flipping through pages I'd written in frustration, silence, and a kind of heartbreak I never thought would come from inside my own walls. The disrespect wasn't new. It had been creeping in like mildew. I'd traced it back. Missed introductions, quiet exclusions, the way Vernice stopped looking at me like her partner and more like her patient, the cold way Kenesha looked through me. I picked up the phone and called Selwyn. "Morning, brother," I said. "I need to ask about some papers I've been putting together." His tone shifted, sharper now. "You getting ready?" I nodded, though he couldn't see. "I'm done being quiet," I said, and meant it. Later that evening, Kenesha hosted one of her legacy dinners. I'd been told it was a family gathering. Turned out it was business. She had name tags on the table, printed agendas. People I didn't recognize. I wasn't even listed as a speaker. I asked Vernice if I should say something, and she shook her head like I was embarrassing myself. "Just enjoy the food," she said. "It's her night." So I sat back, listened. Kenesha stood and gave a toast, talked about continuing the vision and modernizing the brand. Not once did she say my name. A man in a blue suit leaned toward her and said, "It's amazing how you're building off your dad's work." She smiled, sipped her wine, and said, "That's the plan." I sat there chewing food that had no taste. Nobody noticed when I stopped eating. Nobody asked why I was quiet. They were too busy applauding her. After they left, I lingered in the hallway. Kenesha was in her office, didn't bother to shut the door. She was recording a voice memo like always, but this time I stopped, stood still. Her voice was crisp. "We'll initiate phase 2 of legal transition. My father's control is emotional, not operational. We can isolate that." I didn't breathe. I didn't move. She was planning to erase me, strategically, like I was a liability. When she left the room, I stepped in and played it back. Saved it. Sent it to Selwyn. One copy to my own email. One to a flash drive I slipped into the back of the closet. I wasn't planning to leak it. Not yet. But now I had proof. I had her voice saying what her eyes had been hiding. "Let them gaslight me now," I whispered. I got fire this time. 2 days later, I saw it. An email sent from my address. It went to family, board members, church deacons. Subject, leadership, evolution. She'd written about how I was transitioning out, how she was stabilizing the family enterprise. She said it was with my full blessing. Vernice was CC'd. I wasn't. I stared at the screen so long, my coffee went cold in my hand. They used my name, my house, my Wi-Fi, my reputation. I didn't say a word. I just stood up, walked down the hallway, and opened her office door without knocking. She turned, startled. "Dad, I'm in a call." "No," I said, holding the phone up. I pressed play. Her voice filled the room. Every manipulative syllable, every legal phrase. Vernice appeared behind me like she'd followed the storm. "Kenesha," I said, "you recorded yourself trying to take me out of my own legacy." She started talking fast. "Dad, that was just internal strategy. It's business." I cut her off. You used my name, my address, my voice. You sent an email pretending I stepped down. That ain't business. That's theft of identity. She looked at Vernice like she needed backup. Vernice just looked down. You don't understand. Kenesha tried again. This is for stability. I understand enough, I said. I understand that you think leadership is about control, but leadership is earned, not taken. She opened her mouth. I raised my hand. I won't be quiet any longer. And I walked out. Didn't yell, didn't slam the door, but the silence I left behind was louder than anything I could have shouted. Before dawn, I slipped out back to the yard. The air was cool, damp with dew. May came quietly a few steps behind, flashlight in hand. I held the envelope with the recording and the email. Look, I said, this is everything. Her eyes flickered, apprehension tempered by loyalty. She hesitated, then whispered, You done earned my trust again. I handed her a thumb drive. Plant this where Kenesha will see it, I said low. Trust is powerful. I'm gambling on hers tonight. She tucked it under her blouse and nodded. We stood together in silence while the sky turned gray. The pieces were moving. By midday, Kenesha had invited local business contacts for an upscale brunch at our house. Invitations promoted Blackwood Legacy Luncheon, omitting the family patriarch in name but not in location. I arrived late, just past the start, on purpose. I walked in a crisp suit I'd designed years ago, carrying a brown folder thick with documents. Eyes shifted, whispers, glances. I stood at the back until a gentleman called my name. I stepped forward. I was back. When plates were cleared, I asked to speak. It was quiet. I didn't start with anger. I started with fact. I played the recording of Kenesha's voice discussing removing control from me. Gasps. Faces went pale. I read the email she sent from my address, telling board members I was stepping aside. Kenesha stuttered. Vernice's cheeks warmed red. Associates murmured about ethics and betrayal. The room shifted. I asked Selwyn, on cue, to project side by side my genuine signature and the forged one from the power of attorney. The difference was clear as day. The forged looked flat, mechanical. The real had life, hesitation, conviction. Kenesha's legal counsel exchanged panicked glances. She couldn't pretend anymore. You didn't just remove me, I said, voice firm. You impersonated me. A hush fell. I felt vindication settle in. Then the lights dimmed. The projector flickered. Orion's face appeared on screen. The live stream was live. He showed plans from years ago, my name etched in blueprints, archival calls where Kenesha's voice murmured in conspiracies. The betrayal now had witnesses. Kenesha's eyes widened. She sank. I stood taller. You wanted control, I whispered for all to hear. You just handed me the spotlight. I woke up before the sun. I didn't need an alarm. My body knew what tonight meant. I took my time, showered, shaved, ironed the gray suit that hadn't seen light in years. I stood in the mirror, tying my tie like I used to before Sunday service. The man looking back wasn't just a father, not just a husband. I was a cornerstone, and I had proof in hand. I laid it all out on the kitchen table. Recording, forged papers, the original will Selwyn had pulled out from storage. Everything was lined up, neat, cold, undeniable. I wrote a note for Vernice and slid it under her coffee cup. Tonight we face truth. Then I sent Tavian a message. Living room, 6. Be sharp. I could feel it in my bones. Something was going to break tonight, and it wasn't going to be me. The evening air felt stiff. Lights gleamed off rented glassware and silver-lined tablecloths. The hall was dressed like a wedding, but nobody looked like they were celebrating. Kenesha had orchestrated the whole thing. Blackwood family tribute night. Her version of unity, staged and spotless. People from the church, the neighborhood, the business community, every seat taken. They all wore polite faces, but I saw the tension hiding in the corners of their mouths. I walked in without making a sound. I wasn't announced. Didn't need to be. The murmurs came anyway. A few eyes widened. Vernice glanced my way, unreadable. Kenesha walked up with that hostess smile that don't reach her eyes. "Glad you could make it," she said, like I was some late RSVP. I nodded, stepped back, took my place at the end of the front row. If she wanted a show, she was about to get one. Halfway through Kenesha's carefully rehearsed speech about vision, values, and new beginnings, Tavian stood up, loud enough to stop the room cold. "If that's what y'all call family, I don't want my name tied to it." Silence cracked like a whip. Kenesha froze mid-sentence. Tavian reached into his jacket, pulled out folded papers. "I found your letters, Grandpa, in the garage." He read from one. "To lead with love, not fear. To build, not buy. To pass on truth, not performance." His voice shook, but he kept going. "You taught me what legacy means. This ain't it." I didn't move, but inside something rose. My chest filled, not with pride, not yet, but with recognition. That boy was listening all along. Then came Selwyn, calm as a Sunday morning, walked up with a folder that had dust on the edges and fire inside. Kenesha's lawyers stirred, whispering loud enough to be heard. This wasn't part of the agenda. Selwyn opened the document. "This is the original will, dated, notarized, still valid, naming Mr. Thomas as sole trustee. Any new filings made without this context are void." Kenesha's hands trembled. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Vernice lowered her head. The crowd was no longer nodding with her. They were leaning toward me. I stood and read aloud. "My legacy belongs to those who value truth, not performance, not image, but presence." I folded the paper, handed it back to Selwyn, and sat down. And just like that, the air changed. The applause didn't come, but neither did the denial. Then the lights dropped. The screen behind the podium flickered to life. Old home videos, me laying bricks, me at the hospital after Kenesha was born. Photos of the old house, the early church days, the building fund I helped raise. Then my voice, older, slower, but real, overlaying everything. "You don't need to erase me to move forward. You just need to remember." I stepped to the podium one last time. No script, just me. I never claimed perfection, but I showed up. Through every fire, I stayed. I won't be your ghost. I will not be erased. Nobody clapped. Nobody had to. The silence said enough. I stepped off stage. The lights followed Kenesha, but her eyes followed the ground. As I moved toward the side exit, I heard Vernice behind me, just loud enough to freeze my steps. "You changed everything tonight." I didn't turn around. I woke up in the same chair I sat in last night, still in my clothes, tie a little crooked, shoes off but socks still on. Sunlight poured through the blinds, soft and golden, the kind of light that don't rush you. The house was quiet. No voices, no clatter in the kitchen, no footsteps overhead, just quiet. And for once, it wasn't heavy. It was peace. My joints ached when I sat up, but my chest felt light. The weight of all those months, maybe years, was gone. I heard a pan sizzle faintly in the kitchen. A moment later, Vernice came out and slid a plate in front of me without saying a word. Scrambled eggs, grits, sausage, and my favorite mug with hot coffee already poured. She didn't look at me, didn't need to. Her hand brushed mine, just a second. That was the apology. That was love showing up. After breakfast, I sat on the porch watching the street. Leaves rustling, wind pushing them slow across the sidewalk. Tavian's car pulled up. He got out with that old basketball under his arm like he used to carry it when he was 10. No words, just a grin and a nod. We walked down to the court, the same one I took him to after school, after work, when I should have been sleeping. The same backboard I nailed up myself with bent nails and splinters in my palms. He dribbled in silence, then tossed me the ball. I missed the shot, of course. He laughed. That laugh felt like home. Then he said, "Grandpa, I ain't never told you this, but you made me believe I can be more than their plans for me." I stared at the hoop, let the wind talk a little first. Then I said, "It ain't where you come from, Tavian. It's what you carry forward. Make sure what you carry don't cost you your name." He nodded like he felt that in his bones. We walked back without playing much, just existing together. That was enough. Later, I was in the backyard checking the tomato vines when Vernice came out with something in her hands. A photo. Us. Young. Smiling in a way I hadn't seen on her face in years. She sat next to me on the bench. "I lost myself trying to hold on to comfort," she whispered. I didn't say anything. Let her sit with it. She handed me a folded letter. Her handwriting. Her story. The parts I never asked about. The regrets she never let me see. "I don't want to rewrite the past," she said. "But if you're staying, I want to walk forward too." I took her hand. "I ain't looking back to punish. I'm just walking forward." That evening, I put on my Sunday suit and went to church. First time in months. Folks looked, whispered, but I didn't care. Pastor gave me the mic after the closing song. I stood before them, not to defend myself, but to tell the truth. I've made mistakes. Big ones. But I showed up. I stayed. I planted roots. My mama used to say, if truth stands long enough, it becomes a shelter. And now I want to be that for someone else. Some nodded, some bowed their heads. One of the young boys on the front pew had tears in his eyes. I saw myself in him. When I got home, the sun was sliding down low. I sat on the porch again, feeling the world soften. A car pulled into the driveway slow, Kenesha. She didn't get out at first. Then the back door opened, and my granddaughter ran straight to me with a drawing. Crayons all over the page. Me, her, and a treehouse. She threw her arms around my neck. I held her like she was the first part of me I ever got right. Kenesha stepped out finally. No high heels this time. No blazer. Just a daughter again. "You win," she said. "But I'm not here for that." She paused. "You were always the only one who never gave up." She walked back to the car. I watched her drive off without a word more. But that was all right. As the sky turned orange, I leaned back in the chair and closed my eyes. Maybe now I can rest.